Stocks on Wall Street pull back, resuming a sell-off after two straight winning sessions. The Dow drops over 250 points, while the S&P 500 and Nasdaq slip over 1% ahead of the Fed's decision tonight. Stocks in the Asia Pacific are also trading mixed ahead of the Bank of Japan's interest rate decision. Crude oil prices have eased about 1% on the back of possible easing of sanctions on Russian fuel exports. Meanwhile, gold prices have hit another record high, with investors seeking the yellow metal as a haven from risk as conflicts fare in the West Asia. US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin agree on steps towards a total ceasefire and peace deal to end the war in Ukraine. In a phone conversation lasting over 90 minutes, the two sides agreed to begin with an energy and infrastructure ceasefire. The government has proposed a 12% safeguard duty on select steel imports for 200 days to protect domestic producers. The temporary tax aims to curb rising imports and stabilize the domestic markets. And after a 9-month mission, NASA astronauts Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore safely returned to Earth. The SpaceX Crew capsule made a successful splashdown early this morning, bringing a 9-month ordeal to an end. There are no prizes for guessing who's going to be the two most relieved people on the planet right now, but you're watching Power Breakfast this morning on CNBC TV 18 in the Mumbai News Center. I'm Hormuz Fatakia. Let's first take a look at how the Asian markets have started off this morning, and it's a bit of a cautious tinge, if you can call it that, considering the handover that we have had from Wall Street. The Hang Seng continues to trade above the flat line, but not as significantly higher as it has been over the last few trading sessions. The Taiwanese index trading with losses of around 0.4%. The Nikkei in Japan is the one to watch out for, trading currently with gains of around 0.6% ahead of the all-important Bank of Japan policy decision, which should be announced anytime now over the next few minutes. The Shanghai Composite absolutely flat. The Kospi, though, in South Korea is the outperformer today, trading with gains of over 1%. So it's mixed cues across the Asia Pacific and also ahead of the Bank of Japan policy decision. When pull up the GIFT Nifty, that'll give you an idea of how our own markets are likely to start off. Well, after a very, very good session yesterday for the bulls, the implied open is suggesting a further 60-point uptick for our own markets as of now. So it'll be interesting to see if we start off above that all-important 22,800 mark, which we closed above yesterday, and we sustain above that as well. Moving on to Wall Street then. Well, after 2 days of recovery, it was some selling pressure that was witnessed on the benchmark indices yesterday. The Dow was down over 250 points. The S&P 500 and the Nasdaq both down over 1%. In fact, the Nasdaq was down over 1.5%. The tech shares continuing to underperform. CNBC's Bertha Coombs gets us a wrap of all the action on Wall Street.
U.S. markets were down across the major indexes Tuesday as the sell-off ramped up again after 2 consecutive days of gains. The Dow slipping 260 points, the S&P 500 nearing correction territory, down nearly 10% from its recent high, falling 60 points on the day, and the tech-heavy Nasdaq fell 305 points. Google announced Tuesday its intention to buy cloud security startup Wiz for $32 billion, marking Google's largest potential acquisition ever. Google said the deal is expected to close next year, but there's bound to be government scrutiny as Google is already battling an antitrust lawsuit over its online search dominance. But if the deal goes through, Wiz would become a part of Google's cloud business, with the goal of helping improve its offering as cybersecurity becomes ever more crucial in the face of advancing AI. Chinese electric car company BYD unveiled new technology Tuesday that could revolutionize the industry. The company says it's building a new network that will be capable of charging electric cars as quickly as filling up on a tank of gas. BYD says the Super E platform will be capable of peak charging speeds of up to 1,000 kilowatts, enabling cars to travel roughly 250 miles on a 5-minute charge. That's what's happening here in the U.S. Back over to you in Mumbai.
Well, that BYD development has ruffled a lot of feathers, particularly in Tesla. A very interesting story done by our colleague Yusuf, and you can read that on our website, cnbctv18.com. But as Wall Street resumes its pullback, Citi's U.S. equity strategist Scott Cronhurt sees a shift in investor perception and valuations. Listen in.
This mega cap growth cohort, the Mag 7 in particular, these companies are down 20% plus from their 52-week highs to recent lows. So what's happened here under the surface is that you've begun to change the relative valuation construct to where the growth part of the market versus its history is starting to look more attractively valued. I'm not going to say outright cheap or outright inexpensive, but we're less concerned about the valuation framework now than we were going into this year. And that's different from the rest of the market that actually is still more expensive versus history. My point here is that we're getting to a juncture where you give me confidence in the growth trajectories for the Mag 7, and we think this growth as defensive component can begin to creep much more into the market narrative.
And as we inch closer to the FOMC policy decision tonight, Greg Fleming expects the Fed to hold rates and remain highly dependent on the incoming macro data to make a call.
Inflation has been on the right trajectory coming down, but there's still more work to be done there. If tariffs end up in a more robust spot and there's inflation from inflationary pressure there, you've got that on one side, and then how much does the economy weaken? How much slack, in the labor market, slack in the labor market, thank you, that do we have? So they're going to be balancing those two things, but they've got to watch the data on both sides before I think they can move. So I would expect them to be on hold for some time here.
That's all the global market action that we have, but how will all of these overnight cues impact our own markets? Our research team is joining in with how the trade setup looks like, the stocks and news, and of course the setup on the FNO side of things as well. First up, Vamakshi joins in to get all the market cues we need to watch out for. Vamakshi, good morning. It was a fantastic day for the bulls yesterday, but what are the cues you're watching out for today?
Well, absolutely, Hormaz. Good morning. It was a fantastic day for the bulls because they took control. In fact, Nifty reclaimed the 22,800 mark and Sensex moved above the 75,300 mark. Sustained buying actually overpowered the immediate resistance that we had seen somewhere around 22,600 to 22,700. It was both the FIIs as well as DIIs that bought in the cash market. FIIs net bought somewhere around 700 odd crores, and this is the first time that they've done so in the past month. DIIs too bought nearly 2,500 worth of shares. Nifty Bank gained for the fourth consecutive session. It saw an uptick of almost 2%. In fact, ICICI Bank and HDFC Bank were the biggest contributors to both the Nifty Bank as well as the Nifty itself. The broader markets too, which had been beaten up in the last few sessions, saw a very good uptick. The broader markets saw very big gains. The mid-cap index was up nearly 2%. The small-cap index was up nearly 3%. All the sectoral indices as well closed in the green. Media, realty, as well as auto led the charge. Now, as far as the US markets are concerned, they did not have such a great day. US markets were jittery ahead of the Fed interest rate decision. All three major indices closed in the red. As far as the day today is concerned, we'll be keeping an eye out on Bank of Japan's interest rate decision. Keep in mind that Bank of Japan is expected to hold interest rate steady, so we'll be watching out for that. But more importantly, we'll be watching out for the Fed interest rate decision. That again, the expectation is the Fed will be maintaining rates, but the market will be focusing on the forecast of the rate policy going forward. As far as important levels to watch are concerned, on the upside, we may see some resistance at 23,000. On the downside, the support has now been lifted to 22,500. As of now, all indicators, that is the GIFT Nifty, is indicating a positive start to the Indian market.
And they would hope for that these sustain as well. Vamakshi, thanks a lot for that. Over to Vinny now. List out the stocks that you need to keep an eye out for today. Vinny, good morning. What's on your list?
Good morning. Firstly, I'm going to start with Bajaj Auto. We've seen Rajiv Bajaj has been reappointed as the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer for another 5-year period. 1st April is the starting date. GR Infra, keep an eye on that. They have received a letter of acceptance of around 4,263 crores for an order from NHAI. Zydus Life, the company has received a final approval from the US FDA to manufacture a tablet that is amplitude-mide, which is very important for the company, and they have been overall in the last few weeks and months also been receiving approvals consistently, so that's a positive sign for Zydus Life. Juniper Hotels, I beg your pardon, is also in focus. They've signed a share purchase pact with Genipro to develop a 5-star hotel, and this is going to be a resort and a hotel in Kaziranga land, so keep an eye on that. L&T, the company is considering for a fundraising plan via debt issue on 21st impressive March, so important over there. Nazara Tech, they've acquired an 8.97% stake in a company that is called Absolute Sports. This is for around 69 crores. Interesting one for Nazara Tech over there. Yes Bank, they've received an order from of demand order from Mumbai Tax Authority for 145 crores. Could see some pressure coming in for Yes Bank. Now Adani Airports, so Adani Enterprises is what we're keeping an eye out on because the company has proposed a sharp hike in user development fees, and the proposal is for UDF hike from 325 rupees from a nil from the domestic flight version. So keep an eye out on Adani Enterprises, and also keep an eye out on Muthoot Finance. S&P Global Rating has upgraded the rating for the company, and Vodafone Idea has launched 5G in Mumbai. So these are something that we're keeping an eye out on.
Oh, interesting. Keep an eye out on all of these names. Vinny, thanks a lot for that. And lastly, over to Sudarshan, who joins in with cues from the FNO space. Sudarshan, good morning. Finally back above 22,800. Is 23,000 in sight now?
Good morning, Harma. So yesterday in the morning, we were talking about the data is indicating an improvement in market sentiment, and that was reflected in the market move yesterday. And in the evening, we saw that was reflected in FI flows as well. So now talk about yesterday's session, we saw frontline indices closing with gains of 1 to 2%. Even all the sectoral indices closed in the green. And for today also, at least for the start, GIFT Nifty is indicating a start with gains of more than 60 points. Now talking about the flows on the cash front, FIs have sold. Nevertheless, it's a very small amount, but still it's a buy figure. They have bought almost rupees 700 crore, and DIs have bought more than rupees 2,500 crore, and FIs have turned net buyers after selling for almost a month. Now coming to the derivative front, look at the index futures. They have bought more than rupees 4,700 crore. In the index option, they have bought almost rupees 14,000 crore. In the stock futures too, they have bought more than rupees 3,300 crore, and they have added long positions of more than 7,000 contracts, and they have reduced short positions by 23,750 contracts. And with this, FI's long exposure increased to 24%, which is highest since January of 29. Now coming to the option front, it's very interesting data on the call side. Now 23,000 call has seen addition of more than 43 lakh shares, and also we have seen major short covering on call options of 22,700 call, 22,500 call, and on the put side 22,600 put has seen addition of more than 78 lakh shares. So it's indicating that on the downside now, its level has moved higher to around 22,560 to 22,600, and on the upside, resistance is at 23,200. Stocks in focus, SAIL, BSE, Hind Copper, and Manappuram remain in the band, and keep an eye on heavier stocks, ICICI Bank, HDFC Bank, and Reliance Industries as FIs have turned buyers.
Sudarshan, thanks a lot for that. FIs have turned buyers. That was the big data point from last evening as well. We take a short break. On the other side, we take a look at the DGTR's latest proposal to impose safeguard duties on flat steel products. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Now, the Director General of Trade Remedies has recommended the imposition of a provisional safeguard duty on flat steel products. Nigel is joining us from the woods to talk about steel. Nigel, good morning. A long-awaited demand, but what are the implications here?
Well, that's right. The DGTR has recommended the safeguard duty up to around 12% on, on flat products, and this is pending the, the investigation. So, for a period of 200 days odd, you will have this duty that will be in place. And keep in mind, they've also invited feedback from the industry as well. Now, 4 big points that I want to point out at. One is the industry's demand was that they were expecting closer around, they were rallying for around 20 to around 25% in terms of a duty. But realistically speaking, around 10 to around 15% is what they could have got. And that's what most reports have indicated in the last few days or so. Domestic steel prices, remember, the last 1 month or so, they have gone up by roughly around 2,500 rupees per ton, which means it's gone up by closer around 5%. Now, with this 12% duty in place, they have some headroom maybe to go ahead and increase prices by another 2,500 or maybe around 3-4% or thereabouts. Even if that doesn't happen, what it tells you is the current price hike of around the 2,500 rupees, that's going to stay. And that's going to be good news because that will directly flow down to the EBITDA per ton. We already know that coking coal prices are much lower in comparison to Q3. So on the EBITDA per ton front, Q4 numbers itself will look much better. And from Q1 onwards, they have this protection in place. Remember, Indian steel prices have moved up, while for the rest of the globe, we have seen some weakness. So this is good news that's coming in there. Margins are likely to have bottomed out in the Q3 itself. And now, in fact, we'll have to keep in mind to see how the global prices function. Well, we have Phillip Capital that's come out with a note. They say that this is a significant positive for SAIL, JSW Steel, and Tata Steel, and they are mentioned in this order. And also, they're saying for the other, the other value chain itself, it'll be a big positive itself. So, good going for the steel industry, long awaited, and finally, it sees the light of day. So, expect these stocks to do well in today's trading session. Back to you.
The bulls would definitely be hoping for that. Nigel, thanks a lot for joining in from your holiday. When we take a short break, we get your cues from the commodities market on the other side. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Now, President Donald Trump and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin dialed each other yesterday to reach a ceasefire deal with Ukraine. For more details on what the call entailed and the other Trump-related developments, we have Dia Eapen wrapping up in our latest in this special segment, Trump Watch.
Starting off with updates on the critical phone call that lasted 90 minutes. US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin reached an agreement to pause Russian strikes on Ukrainian energy infrastructure for 30 days. However, despite the step forward, Putin rejected the call for an immediate ceasefire, demanding that the West cease military support for Ukraine. The two leaders also agreed to open negotiations for a maritime ceasefire in the Black Sea and discussed longer-term peace possibilities. Despite Putin's rejection of the ceasefire terms, Trump said in a Fox News interview that it was a great call where the pair talked about a lot of things. In a post on his Truth Social site, he said many elements of a contract for peace were also discussed, and that both Putin and Zelensky want to see an agreement to end the war. The Kremlin's account of the call said Putin imposed several conditions for a lasting ceasefire, including the suspension of arms and intelligence support for Ukraine. Ukraine must also stop mobilizing new recruits, it said. The Russian position would force a tough choice on Trump, who must decide whether to continue sending weapons to Ukraine so Zelensky can protect against Russia's full-scale invasion, now in its fourth year. The two sides discussed the US-Russia bilateral relationship, making clear that Trump and Putin are both looking to boost ties beyond Ukraine. As news of the call broke, explosions rang out and air sirens sounded over Ukrainian capital Kyiv on Tuesday, AFP journalists reported. After Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered a 30-day halt to strikes on Ukrainian energy infrastructure. Meanwhile, Germany's parliament approved plans for a massive spending surge on Tuesday, throwing off decades of fiscal conservation in terms of reviving economic growth and scaling up military spending for a new era of European collective defense. That's all for today's updates surrounding Trump's actions both domestically and globally. Back to you, Hormaz.
Dia, thanks a lot for that. And Manisha Gupta now joins in with all the updates from the commodity space. Manisha, good morning. Some ease off in crude oil prices last night, but what else are you tracking today?
Well, yes, we have seen some profit-taking come in for the crude oil prices as Russia agrees to a one-month ceasefire on energy infrastructure. And also the U.S. crude inventories show an increase of 4.5 million barrels. Well, those are a couple of factors which led to some profit-taking. But there's one thing that continues to glitter, and that is gold. $3,038 an ounce is an all-time high now. You know, in this year until now, there have been 14 days where gold prices have hit all-time highs. The escalation in Middle East tension, the U.S. economic data indicating a slowdown in the economy, and very strong inflows in gold-backed ETFs and global central bank buying. All of that has been very, very supportive for the gold prices. Not just gold, silver has seen a strong rebound. Copper prices are now trading at a 10-month highs in the U.S. market. So, well, yes, barring crude oil today, most of the other commodities are doing quite well.
Quite well indeed. Manisha, thanks a lot for that. Well, moving on then, NASA astronauts Butch Wilmore and Sunita Williams made a successful return to Earth earlier this morning after an extended space mission. The spacecraft slowed from a speed of 27,359 kilometers an hour as it entered the Earth's atmosphere and emerged into a clear blue sky before coasting under 4 parachutes that helped to slow the capsule as it prepared to splash down. The astronauts journeyed back to Earth inside a SpaceX Dragon capsule, which made a successful splashdown off the coast of Florida, and a NASA commentator termed it as a calm, glass-like ocean. After splashdown, recovery teams swiftly conducted routine medical checks on the crew before assisting them out of the capsule. NASA astronaut Nick Hague was the first to exit the spacecraft, followed by cosmonaut Alexander Gorbanov. The two were launched to the ISS on board the Dragon Freedom spacecraft in September last year. Sunita Williams was the third to come through at the hatch, and shortly after, Wilmore was helped out of the capsule. The moment marked the long-awaited return of the two astronauts who unexpectedly spent more than 9 months on the International Space Station. The crew will now undergo NASA's 45-day post-mission rehabilitation program designed to help astronauts recover from the physical effects of the space flight. And with that, we call time on this edition of Power Breakfast. From me and the team that put this show together, thank you so much for watching. Bazaar Morning Call sets you up for the day's trade.